I thought the person standing beside me on my wedding day would be the one protecting my happiness. I never imagined he would become the person who made me question everything I believed about family. My name is Rachel Mitchell, and for most of my life, I believed my older brother Andrew was one of the people who understood me better than anyone else. It was the person I looked up to when I was younger, the person my parents trusted, and the person I believed would always stand beside me no matter what happened. That belief was so strong that when he stood next to me on my wedding day, I never once questioned whether he truly supported me. He only saw my brother. He only saw the memories we shared. He only saw the person who had been part of my life since childhood. My wedding day was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. The ceremony took place at a beautiful venue in the countryside outside Nashville, Tennessee, surrounded by family, friends, and the people who had watched my journey over the years. The flowers were exactly how I imagined them. The music created the perfect atmosphere. Every detail felt like a reflection of the future I was about to begin. As I walked through the venue and saw everyone smiling, I felt overwhelmed with gratitude. I remember looking at my parents and feeling thankful that my family was there to celebrate with me. And then I saw Andrew. It was standing near the entrance wearing a dark suit, greeting guests with the same confident smile I had known my entire life. Though everyone else, he looked like the proud older brother who was excited to see his little sister start a new chapter. Though me, he was exactly that. Growing up, Andrew had always been the person who made me feel safe. When I was nervous about new experiences, he encouraged me. When I needed advice, he listened. Because he was older, I naturally believed he knew what was best. Even as we became adults and our lives changed, I still valued his opinion more than I probably should have. He believed his advice came from love. He believed his concerns came from wanting to protect me. That was why I never paid attention to the small moments that, looking back, felt different. Before my wedding, Andrew had been unusually involved in my plans. He asked many questions about the decisions I was making. He shared his opinions often. Sometimes, his reactions felt stronger than I expected, but I always found a reason to explain them away. He told myself he was simply adjusting to seeing his younger sister build a life of her own. He told myself that was normal. After all, family members sometimes struggle with change. He never imagined there could be something deeper behind it. During the reception, everything felt perfect. Guests were laughing, music filled the room, and I felt like I was living inside a dream I had imagined for years. Then Andrew approached me and asked if he could say a few words. Everyone gathered around as he lifted his glass for a toast. He talked about our childhood, our family, and how proud he was of the woman I had become. His words sounded exactly like what I wanted to hear from my brother. He smiled and felt emotional because I believed that moment represented everything I thought our relationship was. But now, when I think back to that night, I realize there was something hidden behind that smile. There were feelings Andrew never shared. There were thoughts he kept to himself. And there was a reason why my wedding day would become the moment that changed the way I saw him forever. At the time, I thought the biggest surprise of my wedding would be the beginning of my new life. He had no idea the real surprise would come from the person I trusted most. He had no idea that before the night ended, I would begin a journey of discovering the truth about my brother, my family, and myself. After my wedding day ended, I thought the happiest memories would be the ones I carried with me forever. I expected to remember the flowers, the music, the laughter, and the feeling of starting a new chapter with the person I loved. But as the days passed, I found myself thinking less about the celebration and more about the moments that did not feel quite right. At first, I tried to ignore those feelings. I told myself I was simply overwhelmed after such a major life event. I reminded myself that Andrew was my brother and that I spent my entire life trusting him. He did not want one confusing moment to change everything I believed about him. But the more I thought about that night, the more I realized there were details I could not explain away. Before the wedding, Andrew had always been someone who wanted to be involved in my life. Normally, I appreciated that. He liked knowing that my older brother cared about my choices and wanted to make sure I was happy. But during the weeks leading up to my wedding, his involvement started feeling different. It had opinions about small decisions that were not really his to make. It questioned certain plans more than usual. Some things when I talked about my future, his reaction seemed less excited than I expected. He noticed those moments, but I ignored them because I wanted to believe the best about him. He thought maybe he was simply having trouble accepting that things were changing. He thought maybe he was just emotional because his little sister was entering a new stage of life. He never considered that there could be deeper feelings behind it. A few days after the wedding, I was looking through pictures from the reception when I noticed something that made me pause. In several photos, Andrew was nearby, watching what was happening around him. At the time, I had not thought anything of it. But after everything that happened, those images felt different. They made me wonder if there were signs I had overlooked. He decided to talk to someone who had been at the wedding. My cousin Lauren had always been honest with me, even when the truth was difficult to hear. When I asked her if she noticed anything unusual that night, she became quiet for a moment. That silence immediately caught my attention. Lauren told me she did not want to say anything during the wedding because she did not want to create unnecessary stress on a day that was supposed to be about happiness. But she admitted that she had noticed Andrew seemed different. She said he appeared distracted and more focused on certain details than she expected. Hearing that from someone else made me feel unsettled. For the first time, I realized that maybe my instincts were not wrong. Maybe there really was something I did not understand. He spent that evening thinking about my relationship with Andrew. He remembered all the years when I believed he would always protect me. He remembered the childhood moments when I looked up to him. He remembered how proud I was to call him my brother. That was what made everything so difficult. If Andrew had always been someone I disliked, the situation would have been easier to accept. But he was not. It was someone I loved. It was someone who had been part of my life for decades. And now I was facing the possibility that the person I trusted most had made a choice that changed everything. The hardest part was not knowing the truth. The hardest part was realizing that the truth might hurt more than I expected. He wanted to believe there was a simple explanation. He wanted to believe that when I finally asked Andrew what happened, he would give me an answer that made everything make sense. But deep down, I knew our relationship was about to change. He knew I could not continue pretending everything felt normal. He needed answers, and I needed to hear them directly from him. I never imagined that one conversation could change the way I saw someone I had known my entire life. For years, I believed I understood Andrew better than anyone else. He knew his personality, his habits, and the way he approached family situations. He believed I could always recognize when something was bothering him. But after my wedding, I realized there were parts of my brother that I had never truly seen. A few days after the celebration, I decided I could not continue wondering what had happened. He needed to stop creating explanations in my own mind and hear the truth directly from him. He reached out to Andrew and asked if we could meet. He did not want an argument. He did not want to accuse him before understanding the situation. He simply wanted honesty. When Andrew arrived at the coffee shop, I immediately noticed that he seemed different. Usually, he was confident and comfortable in every situation. But that day, he looked uncertain. He seemed to know that this conversation was important. We sat across from each other, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. It felt strange because this was the same person I had shared countless memories with. The same person who had been there during important moments of my life. Finally, I asked him a simple question. He asked him if there was something about my wedding that he had not told me. Andrew looked down for a moment before answering. He admitted that he had been struggling with my wedding for longer than I realized. At first, I was surprised. He expected him to deny everything or tell me I was misunderstanding the situation. Instead, he admitted that he had been feeling lost as my life began changing. He explained that for years, he had always been the person in the family who gave advice and helped make decisions. It was used to being the older brother everyone depended on. Back when I got engaged and started building a future of my own, he felt like his role was changing. He said he did not know how to handle that feeling. Listening to him was difficult because I understood that his emotions were real, but I also knew emotions did not excuse choices that damaged trust. He told him that if he was struggling with change, he could have talked to me. He told him I would have listened. He would have wanted to understand what he was feeling. What hurt me most was not simply what happened. It was the fact that he kept those feelings hidden instead of trusting me enough to have an honest conversation. Andrew admitted that he had made mistakes. He said he allowed his own fears and insecurities to affect the way he acted. He explained that he never wanted to hurt me, but he recognized that his choices had consequences. He appreciated hearing him take responsibility, but I also knew that an apology could not immediately repair everything. So many things need time. So many things need consistent effort. After that conversation, I spent a lot of time thinking about what family truly means. For most of my life, I believed family meant automatically trusting someone forever. I believed that because someone loved you, they would always make the right choices. But I learned that family relationships are still relationships. They require communication, respect, and accountability. Love does not mean ignoring the moments when someone crosses a boundary. Love means being honest enough to acknowledge when something needs to change. When I left that coffee shop, I felt a mixture of emotions. I felt sadness because the relationship I had with Andrew was not the same anymore. But I also felt relief because I finally understood what had been happening. He was no longer trying to solve a mystery. He was no longer questioning my own feelings. He knew the truth, and now I had to decide what came next. He had to decide whether Andrew and I could build something new from the trust that had been damaged. He knew it would not happen overnight. But for the first time since my wedding day, I felt like I had control over my own story again. After my conversation with Andrew, I thought I would finally feel better because I had answers. He believed understanding his reasons would make the situation easier to accept. But I quickly learned that knowing why someone made a choice does not always remove the pain caused by that choice. Sometimes the hardest part is realizing that a person can care about you and still make decisions that hurt you. For the first time in my life, I had to separate my love for my brother from the responsibility of protecting my own peace. In the weeks after our conversation, I spent a lot of time thinking about our relationship. He looked back at our childhood, our family traditions, and all the moments when I believed Andrew would always be there for me. Those memories were still real. The good moments did not disappear just because something painful happened. But I also had to accept that the relationship I had before my wedding could not simply return overnight. Something had changed, and pretending otherwise would only create more disappointment. I began paying attention to my own feelings instead of immediately trying to make everyone else comfortable. For most of my life, I had been the person who avoided conflict. If someone was upset, I tried to understand their side first. If there was tension, I usually became the person who tried to fix it. I thought that was what made me a good family member. But after everything that happened, I realized there was a difference between being understanding and ignoring my own needs. I could care about Andrew while still acknowledging that his actions affected me. I could love my family while still expecting honesty and respect. That realization changed the way I approached our relationship. A few weeks later, Andrew reached out again. This time, He did not try to explain his actions or convince me that I should move forward faster. Instead, he asked how I was feeling. That simple question meant more than he probably realized. For the first time, I felt like he was trying to understand my experience instead of focusing only on his own feelings. A admitted that he had spent years believing he was helping because he was the older brother. But he began to understand that sometimes what one person sees as protection can feel like control to someone else. Hearing him say that showed me that he was beginning to reflect on his behavior. He did not expect everything to be fixed immediately. Trust does not return because of one conversation. It returns through consistent actions over time. He told Andrew that I appreciated his honesty, but I needed him to understand that rebuilding our relationship would take patience. He needed to feel that my boundaries were respected. He needed to know that my choices could be my own without feeling like I had to defend them. I agreed, and that agreement became the beginning of a different kind of relationship between us. Around that time, I also had conversations with other members of my family. Some people believed that because Andrew was my brother, everything should be forgiven quickly. They reminded me that family should stay together. He understood their point, but I also realized something important. A family is not stronger because everyone stays silent. A family is stronger when people can be honest with each other and still choose to grow. He did not want revenge. He did not want Andrew to suffer. I simply wanted him to understand that his choices mattered. He wanted him to recognize that trust is something valuable and that it should never be taken for granted. As time passed, I noticed that I was becoming a different person. He was no longer afraid of difficult conversations. He was no longer afraid that setting boundaries would make people leave. He learned that the people who truly care about you will respect your honesty. The experience changed my relationship with Andrew, but it also changed my relationship with myself. He discovered that my voice mattered. He discovered that protecting my happiness was not selfish. And I realized that sometimes the most important step toward healing is accepting that love and boundaries can exist together. After everything that happened, I thought the hardest part would be facing Andrew again. He thought the difficult moments would come from the conversations between us and the effort required to rebuild what had been damaged. But I soon discovered that the hardest challenge was not Andrew. It was dealing with the expectations of the people around us. My family had always valued staying together, and I understood why. We had always been taught that family should support each other through difficult times. But after my wedding, I began to understand that support does not mean ignoring pain or pretending nothing happened. A few weeks after my conversation with Andrew, my parents invited everyone over for a family dinner at their home in Tennessee. It was the first time we would all be together since everything changed. Before arriving, I felt nervous. He wondered if people would understand why I needed time. He wondered if they would think I was being too sensitive or making things more complicated than necessary. Part of me wanted to avoid the conversation completely, but another part of me knew that staying silent would only make me feel like I was hiding my own feelings. When I arrived, everyone tried to act normal. The conversation started with simple topics, like work, plans for the weekend, and everyday life. But I could feel the tension beneath the surface. Everyone knew there was something unresolved between Andrew and me. Eventually, my mother brought up the situation. She said she hoped we could move forward because she hated seeing two people she loved feel distant from each other. He understood her heart. She was not trying to dismiss my feelings. She simply wanted peace in the family. But I realized that peace built on silence was not real peace. He calmly explained that I also wanted to move forward. He wanted my relationship with Andrew to heal. But healing did not mean pretending the past did not happen. He needed time to process what happened and rebuild trust at my own pace. Andrew listened quietly. In the past, he might have tried to explain himself or convince everyone that his intentions were misunderstood. But this time, he did something different. He acknowledged that my feelings were valid. He admitted that he had been focused on his own emotions and had not fully considered how his choices affected me. Hearing that from him changed something. It did not erase what happened, but it showed me that he was beginning to understand. After dinner, Andrew and I talked privately outside. He told me that he had spent a lot of time thinking about the kind of brother he wanted to be. He said he realized that loving someone does not mean controlling their choices or expecting them to follow the path you imagined for them. He needed to learn how to support me as an adult instead of trying to protect the version of me he remembered from childhood. That conversation meant more than a simple apology because it showed growth. He also shared something important with him. He told him that one of the hardest parts was not just what happened at my wedding. It was realizing that someone I trusted could make a decision without considering how deeply it would affect me. He told him that trust is built through small moments, and it can be damaged through small choices too. Andrew agreed. He said he understood that rebuilding trust would require patience and consistency. From that day forward, our relationship slowly began to change. We did not suddenly become exactly like we were before. Instead, we created something new. Something based on honesty instead of assumptions. Something based on respect instead of expectations. He learned that forgiveness is not about forgetting. It is about allowing yourself to move forward without carrying the weight of anger forever. He learned that setting boundaries does not mean you stop loving someone. Sometimes boundaries are what allow love to survive. Looking back, that family dinner was an important turning point. It was the moment when I stopped worrying about whether everyone understood my feelings and started trusting myself. I realized I did not need to choose between loving my family and respecting myself. I could do both. And that understanding became one of the most important lessons I carried from everything that happened. After the family dinner, I thought the hardest conversations were behind me. I believed that once Andrew understood how deeply his choices had affected me, everything would slowly become easier. But rebuilding trust was not about one conversation or one apology. It was about what happened afterward. It was about whether actions would match words. For the first time in my life, I stopped looking only at what people said and started paying attention to what they did. That change in perspective helped me understand relationships in a different way. In the past, I had always believed that love meant giving people the benefit of the doubt. I still believed that kindness mattered, but I also learned that kindness without boundaries could leave you feeling invisible. I had spent years making excuses for people because I wanted to believe they had good intentions. But I finally understood that intentions and impact are two different things. Someone can mean well and still cause pain. Someone can love you and still need to learn how to respect you. A few months after my wedding, Andrew started showing me that he was serious about changing. It was not through dramatic gestures or emotional speeches. Instead, it happened through small moments that showed he was listening. He stopped offering opinions about my decisions unless I asked. He started asking how I felt instead of assuming he knew what was best. Those changes may have seemed small to someone else, but to me, they mattered because they showed awareness. They showed that he was learning to see me as my own person. One afternoon, Andrew and I met for coffee near the park where we used to spend time when we were younger. Sitting there brought back memories of our childhood. We talked about old family stories, the moments when we laughed together, and the experiences that shaped us. For a while, it felt like we were finding pieces of the relationship we thought we had lost. But this time, we were rebuilding it with more honesty. During that conversation, Andrew shared something that stayed with me. He admitted that he had spent years believing his role as an older brother was to protect me from every difficult moment. He thought being needed was proof that he was important in my life. But he realized that I did not need someone controlling my choices. He needed someone who trusted me enough to make my own decisions. Hearing that helped me understand where his feelings came from. It did not excuse what happened, but it helped me see the difference between understanding someone and accepting everything they do. He told Andrew that I also had things to learn. He admitted that I had allowed myself to depend too much on other people's approval. He had spent years trying to keep everyone happy because I believed that was my responsibility. But my wedding experience taught me that I could not build my life around avoiding someone else's disappointment. He had to be honest about what I needed too. That conversation changed the way I saw our relationship. We were no longer trying to return to the past. The past was part of our story, but it was not the only part. We were creating something different, something more mature. He began to understand that some relationships become stronger not because they never experience problems, but because both people are willing to face those problems honestly. Still, there were moments when I struggled. There were times when a memory from my wedding would come back and remind me of how hurt I felt. Healing was not a straight path. Some days were easier than others. But I learned that moving forward did not require me to pretend everything was perfect. It only required me to stop allowing that painful moment to control my future. The biggest lesson I gained was that forgiveness is not a gift you give only to another person. It is also something you give yourself. By letting go of the anger that held me back, I created space for peace. I could remember what happened without letting it define who I was. I could love Andrew while still remembering the importance of my own boundaries. And slowly, I started to feel like I was no longer just recovering from what happened. I was becoming someone stronger because of it. For a long time, I believed that rebuilding my relationship with Andrew would be the final step in healing. I thought once we understood each other again, everything would feel like it did before. But I eventually realized that healing was not about going backward. It was about moving forward with a better understanding of ourselves and each other. The relationship Andrew and I built after my wedding was different from the one we had before, but in many ways, it was stronger because it was based on honesty instead of assumptions. He began noticing changes not only in Andrew, but also in myself. Before everything happened, I was someone who avoided difficult conversations. He worried about disappointing people. He thought keeping peace was always the right choice, even if it meant ignoring my own feelings. But the experience changed the way I viewed my own voice. I learned that being kind did not mean staying silent. I learned that loving my family did not mean accepting everything without question. One of the biggest moments of change happened when my family gathered for a holiday dinner several months later. It was the first time we were all together without the tension that had followed my wedding. In the past, I would have spent the entire evening trying to make sure everyone felt comfortable. He would have watched every word I said and every reaction from others. But this time, I felt different. He walked into that house knowing who I was and what I valued. He was no longer trying to prove that I deserved respect. He understood that respect was something every healthy relationship required. During dinner, my father brought up how much things had changed in our family. He said he was proud that everyone had been willing to have honest conversations instead of avoiding the difficult moments. That statement stayed with me because it represented something important. Our family was not stronger because we never had problems. Our family was stronger because we learned how to face problems together. After dinner, Andrew and I stepped outside to talk. The evening was quiet, and for the first time in a long time, our conversation felt natural again. We talked about our childhood, our parents, and how strange it was that growing up sometimes meant learning how to see each other differently. Andrew told me that he had spent a lot of time reflecting on his actions. He said he realized that he had been holding on to an old image of me. In his mind, I was still the younger sister who needed his guidance. He had not accepted that I had become an adult with my own dreams, choices, and direction. Hearing that helped me understand that some conflicts come from people struggling with change. But understanding someone's struggle does not mean allowing them to ignore your boundaries. He told Andrew that I was grateful he was trying. He told him that rebuilding trust had shown me something important about relationships. People do not become trustworthy because they never make mistakes. They become trustworthy when they take responsibility and work to do better. Andrew agreed. He said he did not expect me to forget what happened. He only hoped that one day I would see that he was trying to become a better brother. That honesty meant more to me than any perfect apology could have. Over time, our relationship continued to improve. We started creating new memories instead of only talking about old ones. We celebrated birthdays together. We shared conversations without the same tension we once carried. Slowly, the painful memory became one part of our story instead of the entire story. Looking back, I realized that the hardest part of betrayal is not only losing trust in another person. It is losing the version of yourself who believed everything would always stay the same. That change can also bring growth. He became more confident. He became more willing to speak honestly. He became someone who understood that my feelings mattered too. Andrew and I did not rebuild our relationship by pretending nothing happened. We rebuilt it by accepting what happened and choosing to grow from it. And that choice changed everything. As time passed, I started to realize that the biggest change after everything that happened was not only in my relationship with Andrew. The biggest change was in the way I saw myself. Before my wedding, I spent so much time believing that keeping everyone happy was the same thing as being a good person. I thought being understanding meant always giving people another chance without asking whether I was being respected. But after my experience with Andrew, I learned that real relationships require balance. Love should not require you to ignore your own feelings. Family should not require you to stay silent. And forgiveness should not mean forgetting the lessons that life teaches you. A year after my wedding, I found myself looking back at that difficult chapter with a completely different perspective. The memory was still there, but it no longer carried the same weight. I no longer felt the same confusion or disappointment that once followed me everywhere. Instead, I saw that moment as the beginning of a personal transformation. I had discovered a strength inside myself that I never knew existed. I became more confident in expressing my thoughts. I became more comfortable saying no when something did not feel right. Most importantly, I stopped believing that protecting my own happiness was something I needed to apologize for. Andrew and I continued building our relationship slowly. We did not try to erase the past or pretend everything had been perfect. Instead, we accepted that our relationship had changed. There were still moments when we disagreed, but those moments felt different because we knew how to communicate. We learned to listen before reacting. We learned to ask questions instead of making assumptions. We learned that being family did not mean automatically understanding everything about each other. It meant being willing to learn. One afternoon, Andrew and I visited the place where our family used to spend summers when we were children. Walking through that familiar area brought back memories of who we were before adulthood became complicated. We talked about old stories, family traditions, and the dreams we had when we were younger. During that conversation, Andrew told me something I never expected to hear. He said that what happened at my wedding taught him a lesson about love and responsibility. He said he used to believe that being a good brother meant always having answers and always knowing what was best. But he realized that sometimes the greatest way to support someone is to trust them enough to make their own choices. Hearing those words meant a lot because I knew they came from genuine reflection. Andrew was not trying to change the past. It was simply acknowledging it and learning from it. He also shared something with him. He told him that I had learned an important lesson too. He learned that I could not control how other people acted, but I could control how I responded. He could choose whether I allowed disappointment to define me or whether I used it as a reason to grow stronger. That realization gave me peace. He stopped asking why someone I loved could make a choice that hurt me. Instead, I started asking what that experience taught me about myself. The answer was clear. It taught me that I was stronger than I thought. It taught me that my voice deserved to be heard. It taught me that relationships worth saving are built through honesty, paciencia, and respect. Looking back, I no longer see my wedding day as only a painful memory. I see it as the moment that changed my understanding of family. I learned that family is not about being perfect. It is about being willing to grow, admit mistakes, and choose better. Andrew and I were not the same people we were before, and maybe that was a good thing. We became more honest with each other. We became more aware of each other's feelings. We created a relationship that was not based only on history, but on the choices we made every day. And in the end, that was the lesson I carried with me. Sometimes the moments that break our expectations are the moments that help us discover who we truly are. I used to believe that the most important moments in life were the ones we planned carefully. I thought happiness came from perfect celebrations, perfect relationships, and perfect memories. But after everything I experienced, I learned that the moments we never expect are often the ones that teach us the most. When I look back now, I do not only remember the disappointment. I remember the strength I discovered, the conversations that changed my family, and the person I became because I chose to face the truth instead of avoiding it. My relationship with Andrew is not the same as it was before my wedding. In some ways, it is not as simple as it once felt. When we were younger, I believed family connections were automatic. I thought being siblings meant we would always understand each other without needing to explain ourselves. But growing up taught me something different. Even the strongest relationships need care. Even people who love each other can make mistakes. And even after a painful moment, people can choose to become better. Andrew and I did not rebuild our relationship by pretending the past never happened. We rebuilt it by accepting what happened and learning from it. That difference changed everything. We became more honest with each other. We became more comfortable having difficult conversations. We stopped assuming we knew what the other person felt and started asking. That simple change created a stronger connection between us. Months after my wedding, I attended another family gathering. As I walked into the room, I realized something that surprised me. I was not nervous anymore. I was not worried about whether everyone approved of my choices. I was not trying to make myself smaller to keep the peace. I felt calm because I finally understood my own worth. I could love my family without losing myself. I could forgive without forgetting. I could move forward without carrying anger everywhere I went. During that gathering, Andrew and I shared a quiet conversation. It told me he was grateful that we had been honest with each other, even when it was uncomfortable. It said he understood now that trust is not something people automatically receive forever. It is something they protect through their actions. Hearing that reminded me how much had changed. The brother who once struggled with accepting my independence had learned to respect it. And the sister who once avoided conflict had learned that her voice mattered. He also realized that forgiveness had changed me in ways I never expected. Forgiveness did not mean that I forgot the emotions I experienced. It did not mean that everything became exactly the way it was before. Instead, forgiveness meant I no longer allowed one painful chapter to control my entire story. He was able to remember what happened while still appreciating the growth that came afterward. My wedding day began as a celebration of love and a new beginning. He never expected it to become a lesson about trust, boundaries, and personal strength. But life does not always teach us through the moments we choose. Sometimes it teaches us through the moments that challenge us the most. Today, when I think about Andrew, I do not only see the mistake he made. I see the person who recognized that he needed to change. I see the brother who learned that supporting someone means respecting their choices. I see the relationship we rebuilt through patience and honesty. And when I think about myself, I no longer see someone who was hurt by a difficult experience. I see someone who discovered her own strength because of it. The greatest lesson I learned is that family is not defined by never making mistakes. Family is defined by the willingness to acknowledge those mistakes, learn from them, and grow together. Some things the people we love will disappoint us. Some things they will make choices we never expected. But those moments can also reveal our courage, our values, and our ability to create something better. I walked away from that chapter with more than a painful memory. I walked away with confidence, understanding, and a deeper appreciation for who I had become.